Car was actually facing up the canyon, but was upside down in the river. No one will ever make the jump from hearing about it to doing it.
Does that mean I remove all of my communication skills as well, or my empathy?
And what's more uncontrollable and, fear-invoking than a 2,000-pound animal?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Heal the Hurt podcast. My name is Chris Wilkins, and I am here with my friend Crystal, and so excited to chat with her today and give you guys an opportunity to get to know her and what she's all about. So, Crystal, how are you? How's the day going so far?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. I like that we're doing this first thing in the morning because there's no hecticness to compete with. I'm here for you. Yeah. We're here.
Awesome. Who are you?
Well, that is such a good question. In the realm I work in, who we really are is infinite beings of light hurtling through the universe. A couple roles I played, and actually this is interesting because how we met was because of my role in holistic and natural resources for addiction recovery. So things like meditation and yoga and mindfulness for addicts or for people in recovery. And that's how we met all those years ago. So I've kind of weaved my way in my professional life through healing the body, through personal training in many modalities like Tai Chi, Pilates, yoga, and all of that was kind of a gateway drug for me into deep mental, emotional, and metaphysical kind of principles and healings in meditation, breath work, things like that.
That's
so
amazing.
In my personal life, I'm a mommy, and that's what I prioritize and put at the top of my list. And I kind of do this stuff on the side. I'm married to a veteran. He's actually still in the military. So I'm a military wife. I was born and raised in Massachusetts. I love horses. I train horses. A lot of my stuff has horse analogies. And so if you're an animal person, you're healed by animals, you'll probably resonate with me and we can align on those. And if you hate animals, you might get a little annoyed. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. What else?
Awesome.
What else do you know about me?
I know everything, most of the things that you've shared so far. And yes, we did connect in what I consider to be such a wonderful place of healing. And so as you were talking about horses, I vividly and fondly remember working out with the horses and taking some of our residents or our clients, our friends, whatever we choose to call them, out to do equine therapy and seeing some of that amazing healing. Even at first for me, being kind of afraid of it, not scared, but nervous around it, around the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncontrollable even, right?
And what's more uncontrollable and, fear-invoking than a 2,000-pound animal?
Yeah, yep.
And you don't understand its mannerisms and tendencies, of course.
Yeah,
and I always found 1 or 2, maybe out of 10, really connected with the horse therapy. Same with yoga, that's why I like in these places they offer so many well-rounded different, things to take outside into the healing world with them, for aftercare, their long-term self-care. What do you think? What do you think were those statistics? For me, it was like I could always count on 1 or 2 really grasping on to the meditation or the horses.
That I hadn't thought of this earlier, but Mondays and Fridays at that facility, I would teach the Intro to Mindfulness or Intro to Meditation workshop to all the new residents, part of the STAR program, right?
Yes.
And I think I did that for a year or close to a year. And I would ask clients, the new residents, how many of you have meditated before? And sometimes it was like 4 out of 10 would raise their hand.
Okay.
And I'd say, okay, well, what kind of meditation did you do? Transcendental or hypnotherapy or guided meditation, or I just sit in silence. And then people would start saying, well, I do yoga. And they would say, I go to the gym, or I put my headphones in and I listen to music. And people are starting to think outside of the box. Because when we think meditation, we think cross legs, right? Hands out to the side, saying ohms. And that's amazing. That's a wonderful form of meditation, but it's not limited to that. There's this belief that we can meditate in every action that
Yeah.
we're doing. And sometimes we're very mindful in unproductive or even unhealthy and dangerous ways. And sometimes we can be very productive and healing, being mindful, being in the present moment, being totally dedicated to the experience that we're having. I'm stealing that quote from my favorite movie, which is called Peaceful Warrior. Being totally immersed in the experience that you're having,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on right now. And a future episode when we visit, we can even dig into that even more when there's pain,
Yeah.
but we're noticing it, we're paying attention to it,
Mm.
as opposed to running from it and trying to escape, going ostrich style, sticking our head in the sand and going, nope, there's no wound. I'm not bleeding, or I'm not hurting. I'm not depressed. I'm not grieving. I'm not any of those things. Or we can lean in and go, this is really hard right now. And I'm struggling. I can't do this alone. And what are my coping skills, and who's my support team, and all of that. So,
I love that.
but as we say that, how many people had raised their hand? We started talking about being mindful while doing the dishes. I don't know anyone except maybe my mom who enjoys doing the dishes. Enjoys. I don't like air quotes, but we're going to do air quotes. Enjoys it. I don't think she actually loves it. Mom, I don't think you love doing the dishes, but it's this thing we tell ourselves, well, I've got to do it. Someone's got to do it. So how can I make this less undesirable, less bothersome? And so, for example, here's a coping strategy, hopefully for people. If you hate the dishes like I do, notice the aroma of the soap that you're using. Try to count the bubbles. What is the temperature of the water that you're using? Just like paying attention to everything in the environment. And before I know it, the dishes are done. None of this, oh, gross. Like what is that? And who didn't eat all their food? And there's this gras doux stuck to I love that word, gras doux, by the way. There's gras doux stuck to the silverware, and that kind of stuff. So we can completely have a different experience depending on our attitude and our perspective. So, I think by the time people left that facility, 70 or 80% of the people were using some form of meditation, some form of mindfulness, from, like you said, horses, the gym, guided meditation, music, different mantras, but all of some of the additional ways that we can meditate. That's not limited to legs crossed. So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, so much there that I really love. And I think that's why I try not to put that one form, or the things that I do can be set in a container or a box. And I try not to apply that to everyone or say, this is the one way, just because of what you said, from observing people over the last 20 years, and diving deeper into the principles. It's very unique. It's very specific per person. So a lot of the language is, what is this for you? What's the thing that gets you there for you? What does it feel like to you? And mostly point people towards themselves. Every great guru or teacher won't tell you what to find or exactly what that's going to be, but they absolutely will tell you where to look. And those are the teachers you want to follow. And where to look is always pointing people back to an inward gaze in themselves, because if you found that in yourself, then you truly recognize, and can, push that forward, that your best guru, the divinity, lies within, and you trust that those answers will come out. Like, you no longer fear that, like, you have to save people or give them the answer, anything like that, because when you point them in the right direction, you really trust it's in there. And I really trust and believe in people, right? I always like to say, I'm not worried about you. And it's even more powerful to say, you want to know why? Because I know you can access that within yourself. I see you find the answers. I know you always make your way through it. I know you have the tools. And we can always support people. But just that slight gauge, differentiation in navigation is really important, in a good teacher, and it empowers people. So it's a longer lasting change. I also love that we sort of delved into that mindfulness piece right off the bat, because what I want to share, and maybe a lot of listeners know this, but if you don't, even in just yoga, which was one of my foundational trainings, Ashtanga yoga 20 years ago, it's a very specific, dedicated, daily contained practice, right? And you approach the same series on your mat the same time every day over and over and over. And a lot of these ancient practices are like that. Vipassana has a series, you follow. Ashtanga has a series. And the point, right? There's 8 limbs of yoga, but the point to any of these practices, which sometimes people don't stop and ask for years. I don't think I stop and ask this till year 7 or 8. They say you're a beginner for the first 7 years. You can be a practitioner for the next 7 years. You can say, I do this practice, I participate in this, but it's not until you enter your 3rd year of 7 that you can be even considered a master of any of the principles in the series. And so circling back to the end of my sentence, which is the why, the point, the reason why we do these practices is to achieve enlightenment or samadhi or mindfulness in the moment, in every moment of your day. So the only reason we're doing it on the mat for an hour or 90 minutes is for that feedback and practice so that you can do it when you're washing the dishes, and you can do it when you're parenting, and you can do it when we're together right now talking. And so if if you've already reached the point, and I've met a lot of people like this actually, maybe your mom's one of them. I've actually met people who are sort of born little Buddhas, and they sort of have a tendency throughout their life to be such a beautiful example to us, where they just hold this vibration, where they are very present and very mindful. And then others of us, I'll raise my hand, need hours in training, hours of intellect, hours in breath, hours in learning, right? Hours on my mat to finally get it, to be like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And then it starts seeping into my life and I'm a better person for it. And I'm like, oh, what beauty, what connection, what relief. Then I am your mom washing dishes. And I suspect she does truly feel love and enjoyment and elevated vibrational emotions when she's doing it, because I have. When it has seeped into my life, I have been, gardening or dealing with my horse, or even less fun things, right? Like dishes or bills or on the phone with an insurance agent. And I felt those moments drop in. I'm like, oh, it's actually never about what you're doing. It's always about how you're doing it. And many people can reach that, like you said at the beginning, in many different ways. And the reason why we have some of these practices and why they work so well is because there truly are some potent things that hold a lot of gravity in this experience we're having. A very strong magnetic field, right? Like a torus field we talk about. And horses are one of them. Horses are in heart coherence. Their torus field, or their magnetism, holds, they've measured it up to about 30 feet. They've been in heart coherence. So it's powerful when you're with somebody who's in avoidance and addiction all the time, and you bring them in presence with a person like that, a horse, a heightened experience like the rock climbing wall or things like that, right? Sometimes that magnetic resonance goes and pulls them in, right? So that's how we start teaching it, is by co-regulation. And so you can't talk about it. How we were talking, I go to a lot of these seminars and they talk about self-care, they talk about mindfulness, right? But that is never a way for somebody to embody it. No one will ever make the jump from hearing about it to doing it with the intellectual talking about it. Like listening to this podcast is never going to actually help you make the jump. It'll give you some ideas. But just like a child, the only way to do it is co-regulation. And that's why I think these facilities and like what you do is so important, because you have them here and you're giving them the experience. You're not talking about it. It's why I run retreats, because whatever I can say, do, sell you on to come to one, great. But once you're there, that's when you can actually feel the co-regulation. And then, like Joe Dispenza says, the more you feel it in your body, the more you're able to tap into it, right? It's that reminder. Then you can do it more and more and more on your own. And then it happens spontaneously, like with your dishes example.
I'm thinking of a level of familiarity. And when we're talking about, I'm trying to write notes because there's going to be so much good stuff that
You're so good at that.
that we bring up. And I want to I want to pick up on those things, and maybe we'll have like a bonus clip or something like that after this, but for our listeners. But this idea of co-regulation, this idea of connection, like we were talking about before we started recording, I've gone to all of these conferences where we talk about theories and philosophy of self-care, of mindfulness, of meditation, of grounding techniques and coping skills. And even when I teach that intro to meditation, there's a portion where we put up on the board, these are the theories. This is what we're talking about. We're trying to define things, but then we need to go into doing. And so you wrote, or you said this, it's never about what you were doing, it's about how you were doing it. And so how can I manifest the actual benefits of mindfulness practice? And I think it was up at Brighton Ski Resort the first time I went to like an all-day conference for our continuing education. And we actually had the self-care workshop was mindfulness practices. And we did guided meditations. I think we went on a walk even, and we're noticing, I don't remember what the season was, but we were noticing nature, we were noticing wildlife and everything that way. And it was just this incredible, incredible experience. And we need more of those.
Oh, I love that. And you remembered it, right? And I know how many hundreds of hours or things you've done like that. Mm-hmm. But that was the experience you wanted to tell us about, because that was the experience that you embodied. I spoke at a conference for an online nursing school. There was about 800 people there. And it was, well, let's see, I'd done yoga for a couple MLMs at their conferences for 400 or 500 people, but nothing like this before. This was the first time where I had a mic, right? I was up in front of 800 people 4 times. They separated them in, right? 4 iterations of the 800 people. And I felt the energy, and I felt nervous, like kind of when you're at the cap of something you haven't done before, you feel all that. And I was going to talk to them the whole time, but because of my practices, I felt like for myself, even the tone in my voice, if I had talked to them that whole time, wouldn't have been as powerful as if we embodied it. And what I needed to embody it was to practice it. And so I still shared some of the things on my PowerPoint, in the good public speaking trainings you go to. I have an obligation. You paid me to show up as a public speaker. And I think 3 times, once and then twice and then 3 times by the last iteration, I had them do some of the practices with me. And I was so nervous that I was going to go off script and ruin something, or, the imposter syndrome, where I didn't provide what they had hired me for. And I got more positive feedback in those opportunities than I have in anything else I've done. And I think what you're saying really sunk into me, which was, that is the important thing to do. That is the service you can do somebody. And this is, what I've been pondering on even right now. This isn't a formula I'm giving you because I've, been teaching it for 10 years. But right now in my life, something I've been pondering on is the service we can offer people. And you probably already know something like this. So I want to hear what you think about this, because you're in sessions with people, right? Even if I can't take someone through a meditation right now, like, close your eyes, feel the ground beneath you. But I can provide that resonance in my body if I hold an eye ground and I start regulating right now. Just like if you are regulating, like, you're so successful as a therapist in what you do, I believe mostly because of your ability to ground. And like, if people have been listening to your podcast, the tone your voice has, right? I think it just lends itself to a lot of grounding and calmness and helps co-regulate people anyways. You have that gift. And if you add on to that mindfully, I'm going to use my voice and my tone and my resonance to regulate, we're all whole in this moment. We're just talking about fun concepts, but everything's okay. What messages are coming up for you that you can witness in your self-care? What do you need? And you just use your voice to do that. That's something I've been playing with right now. And I'm not a therapist, so maybe you've been trained in that long ago. But I also noticed from that experience I shared with you, gosh, I need to give them the embodied experience. Talking at them doesn't help anybody. And two, if the only tool I have is to talk with somebody and we can't drop into a practice, then can I use my resonance to co-regulate in that? So I'm sort of living in those questions. Maybe the listeners have good answers, or maybe that sparked something for them to ponder on. But I'd love to hear what you think about that too as a therapist.
I love that. I'm thinking of um, so many people in my world who have that gift,
Yeah.
and they might not have like letters after their name or whatever. Maybe they're in all walks of life.
Mm.
And I, maybe more so than like graduate school or that kind of training, the movie I referenced earlier, Peaceful Warrior, I really wish I got royalties for pushing, what do you call that, a kickback or something like that.
Yeah. It's like sponsors. Your
Yeah, yeah,
advertising.
Dan, he's the author of the book. But
Mhm.
anyway, one of the characters in that movie, which is based on a book, he works in a service station.
Mm.
And we think, in our society, we think a gas station or a convenience store. And he emphasizes his nickname in the book, in the film, is Socrates. And he talks about it being a service station. And he says, we give service to others. And it's such a powerful concept. At first listen or first glance, it goes over our head. Well, it's a service station. Yeah, we know what that means.
Yep.
You know, mechanic or a gas station combined with work on my car kind of a thing. But service to others. And in that, he says, there's no greater purpose. And so you touched on this. You mentioned that. And what better way to co-regulate, right? This buzzword from before, to co-regulate with someone than to sit in space with them and show them how to ground. Not tell them how to ground, but actually teach them by observation, by example. This is how we do it. And sometimes it's saying things and the way that we say it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's breathing and just
Yeah.
a little more audibly breathing in,
Mm.
inhaling, and exhaling, and helping them see this is okay to do. It's okay to make funny sounds when we inhale. It's okay to, when we inhale, if we're a little bit stuffed up and it makes the funny sounds as we inhale, okay, it makes us giggle a little bit too,
Yeah.
which then actually distracts from some unhealthy thoughts or stressors because it gives us something else to focus on, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And a giggle is also a release of energy, a release of an emotion. So when we do breath work and the things that I do in my world, laugh, cry, scream, shake, those are all emotional releases. So laughing is just as healing as crying. And you've probably noticed sometimes that happens. It made me think of, what do you do with your kids? What do you do with your kids when they are going through something difficult or dysregulated or upset? I feel like those things come naturally.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had my oldest through horrible tantrums between the ages of 2 to 6. She had this great amount of space where I had the opportunity to learn all of these skills, which still benefit me today. So thank you to my oldest daughter for going through that period of time. And I watched myself, right? I watched myself sometimes add fuel to the fire because of my dysregulation. And I watched myself practice certain tools. One way it was explained to me was helping someone get through the tunnel. So you have to sit and you have to breathe and you have to hold and you have to rock and you have to hum, right? But the first thing you always have to do is regulate yourself. And then you kind of have to wait it out through the tunnel. One trick that came to me recently, actually, in a recent deep meditation where I was asking, like, how can I be better at being in the present moment? What am I missing? I'm feeling a lot of chaos in these situations or in these facilitations. And what I was given was use your eyes, pay attention, I've been doing a lot of Kundalini meditations for regulating the hemispheres of the brain, which helps you come back into the present moment. And like you said, distractions. It's okay if there's distractions, but you can notice if your mind falls down them. It means you probably have neurological pathways, a lot of them for avoidance, some familiarity, some pain, some deep things that are coming up that you haven't been able to stay present with yet, like you said earlier. And so I've been noticing a lot of those kind of slippery slopes, as I would call them. And so I said, what can I learn or use or do now? And the information I got was your eyes. Where your eyes focus will keep the hemispheres of your brain balanced and will keep you in the present moment. Is that interesting?
It is
So
interesting.
I watched the last podcast I recorded when I was feeling in this chaotic energy in the last month, and I was telling a story and looking up and looking, like I was looking all around. It was my eyes. And I watched the whole hour. And yes, I'm human. It made me really uncomfortable and I didn't want to post it. But I did anyways, because half of my podcasts are voice only. But it was such a beautiful learning experience for staying present with what you're looking at. We have this one meditation. If you guys are listening to this podcast, you won't be able to see it. I'll describe it. But if you're watching it, we have one meditation where you hold warrior pose with your hand out in front of you, but you stick your thumb up like you're hitchhiking. And for the entire thing, for 2 or 3 minutes, you focus on your thumbnail and you do breath of fire, which is in and out through the mouth. But you cannot move your eyes from your thumbnail, right? You're in kind of like this archer pose in warrior one. And you have to do that the entire time. And it's a good feedback loop to where your brain and your energy is. And it's also a good mindfulness practice. Like you were saying, the more you do it, the more you're able to access it. So now you'll even notice now how much we focus when we talk, because it brings you into that parasympathetic nervous system response, right? Like that coherence. So that's just a tidbit. That's a fun recent one that helped me again in mindfulness.
I love that. It makes me think of going back to the familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And when something's new, there's a certain level of like, nah, I don't, that doesn't work for me. I've tried that. And with the mindfulness workshop, people would say, I've tried, I would even ask, why wouldn't you meditate? Mm-hmm. What keeps you from meditating? And we would hear that. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. I don't have time. I can't quiet my mind and all these things. I'm going, like I'm trapping you. Like, yeah. Being mindful gives you back all of those reasons not to do it. All those, I'll call them excuses, right? All those reasons that we can't connect and be in the present moment. By practicing it, we're gifted like benefits in every single one of those areas, at least that I've experienced, right? So I mentioned the word, did I say distract? Or distract, deny, deflect, whatever it is, right? And sometimes the pain is so intense, the struggle is so intense, or stress is so high that I can't deal with this right now. I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna tip the scales. Whatever it is. And so we need to go to something else, and we'll call that delay. Right. So I'm just going to do some coping skills. I'm going to come to Crystal's yoga course. And we're going to talk about your retreats here in a moment, please. I'm going to do those things, or even I'm going to take a nap, a bubble bath. I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to get some water, whatever it is, I'm going to pull myself away from this for a moment, knowing I'm going to come back to it when the time is right. When I have the capacity, when I have the mental, emotional fortitude to deal with this. But right now it's too much.
Oh, you bring up such a good point. I love that. What do you do in therapy regarding that concept? I'll tell you what we do in my world, but I'm curious, when all you have is like talk therapy and assigning your clients things, how do you deal with that? Do you tell them to set a time to come back and then meditate? Like what's the rhetoric around that? What do you do?
It's different for every person. I have kind of my general protocol that I'll look at, which is when you come into my office, and I'm a very expensive friend. You're not coming in here just to complain about stuff. You're coming in here because your world has been shattered or jeopardized. Your safety has been threatened or taken from you on some level. You've witnessed horrific tragedy and events. So we do a lot of trauma work. We're dealing with a lot of addiction recovery issues, anxiety, but it's not like, oh, I was going to give a talk in front of my peers and I had some stage fright. That's not, I'm not minimizing that. I'm not trying to reduce the significance of that.
Yeah.
But when you come into this place, it's hard.
Let's do
It's
the
got
work.
rough, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll tell people, I'd really like you to do that work while you're here. And then when you leave this place, I want you to take care of you. I'm a big giver of homework assignments because I had a mentor say to me, I tell my clients I'm more impressed with what you do outside of my office than what you do in it. But that's a big responsibility. When someone's established some progress and growth is happening and that healing evolution is taking place, then that statement for me can kick in, right? Because now someone's more capable of working on themselves outside of the office. But sometimes we are emotionally dysregulated, even paralyzed at times when this stuff is just so big and so intense. And so I'll give self-care type of homework assignments or exploring kind of not as in-depth assignments for them because I don't want them to max out when I'm not there, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm the training wheels for someone or like they have to have me or something like that. But we don't want to push somebody over the edge. So in office, we'll go there, we'll lean into that pain. And sometimes we'll go there for 30 minutes and then we'll back out and kind of delay or distract, deflect a little bit, give a break, right? It's just a mini set break for those who are in the gym sometimes, right? And sometimes we'll use a little bit of humor. Like you mentioned before, giggling is a release as well, And so, in fact, the same mentor who told me about outside of the office said, I think a good therapist can make you cry, make you laugh the next moment, and then have you back feeling your emotions and crying again. And it's not to poke you and like go, yeah, I made him cry. Good. Like it's not bully syndrome or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing those are natural emotions that a lot of times we hold back, we numb out, we push down because we're uncomfortable with them coming up. I'm still uncomfortable when I get emotional. I was speaking to some students yesterday at one of the schools nearby, and somebody asked me, "Why did you get involved with psychology and social work?" And this kind of thing, like, why did you have to ask me that question? Like, I'm supposed to talk to you. I'm not supposed to feel, right? It's getting in the way of me talking. It's getting in the way of me like conveying a message to you. But it was an invitation for me to reflect on why do I do this? And as those emotions start to come up, one of my reactions in the moment is, oh, shut up, like go away. Don't feel it. Don't feel it. Don't feel it. And I'll even say to them, you're supposed to feel. I invite you to feel. I'm not supposed to, because again, it trips me up. And I have to be reminded of that's what this process is all about, is that authenticity, that being real, that figuring out who am I? What am I experiencing right now? And that can actually help people co-regulate. Okay. Because I have a great mentor who's just come back into my life. He was one of my professors about 20 years ago, and he's a big, tough guy. Rides with Baca, loves kids. The class I took from him was called Applied Parenting. And here's this big, tough, ZZ Top bearded man with tattoos, rings, skull rings and everything. And he would cry. And this wasn't a little teardrop. This was the sniffles, I'm going to take a moment. And it taught me that it's okay to be real with my emotions. That doesn't mean I force it. That doesn't mean I'm trying to I've got to cry. That's what they're looking for. It's what's going on within me. And it's okay when we're safe, when it's an appropriate environment to be genuine,
I love that. And I love what you said, that does actually help other people co-regulate by example.
Yeah.
And that's powerful. I want to touch back to how you started, which is, it sounds like what you're saying is you use the time when you're with people to actually do the work. It sounds like you're saying, when you're here, you've got me as help. And I am a person who is learning, practicing, has teachers, is willing to show up in my emotion and my authenticity. And you're doing that more and more. And sometimes that does mean example of showing emotions. Sometimes, I mean, that's the definition, right, of empathy, is I'm climbing down into the hole and I'm feeling it with you and I'm mirroring emotions and I'm validating. That's hard. That's sad. And with my body and my words, I can mirror that, which means that is authentic, right? And I love how you said it's about your motive. I'm not saying, oh, haha, I made you cry, but my motive is because I know that that's the release you need, because I know that this is actually the way by which you will understand the messages and obtain healing. I'm willing to do that with you. And that's a different motive. But it sounds like you're saying, when they're with you, that's the time for that work. You are an expensive friend. Let's not waste it, right? Let's actually do it. And with your knowledge and your skills and your talents and your willingness to be authentic, that'll be kind of like a dance, right? Eckhart Tolle says in his book for healers, there's always you and that person and then the third entity. And you need to leave room for spirit, for that dance, for that intuition of what's going to happen during that time. And I think that's beautiful. And thank you for answering that question for me, because that's very similar to what I do. And I think that's really beautiful and kind of spiritually advanced, because I've been to therapists my entire life since I started going when I was like 9 years old. And I haven't found a lot of that, to be honest. I don't know if my experience is rare, but my story and what I've had, that is rare, what you do. And I think it's beautiful, because it sounds like what you're saying is, when you're by yourself and it's hard or scary and you may not be in an environment that's safe, or you may not have someone to help you co-regulate outside of this, let's start gently. Let's have you do self-care outside of this, and let's start doing the work so you can build familiarity when you're with me and I can help you co-regulate. And if I'm wrong, correct me. But if that's what you're saying, that is such a beautiful paradigm. That's also what I do. Like if people come to a retreat or energy work or yoga or breath work, right? Like in my mind, I just love that you said that so much, because that is the time for the work, because that's when you have people there to hold you. That's when hopefully you have people who are authentic, who have boundaries, who have done their self-care, who are showing up to hold the space that you can lean on a little bit. And it adds some depth to that, saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? A lot of times they're flailing on their own. You can't do it out there. But when they're ready, the teacher appears, and it seems like a journey that flows at one point in time is not the same as another point in time, because there's this point that Chris is illustrating beautifully when the teacher has appeared, and then there's all these nuances of how to work with your teacher. And I would put a plug in for that. If your teacher is pointing you towards yourself and your teacher is co-regulating and you're getting the work done with them, you're not just talking and whatever, and then you're taking care of yourself outside of that, that's a good container. That's a good modus operandi to start your healing journey. But then the saying goes further and says, when the student is truly ready, the teacher disappears. And that's like the principle in yoga, right? The samadhi, the mindfulness. That's like the Eckhart Tolle teachings, where he's saying, but now you can do this every moment in your life as a therapy session, right? Like every moment is a ceremony, is a breathwork thing for me in my life, right? I just have to recognize it as that. Oh, this is coming up. I'll treat it as a session. I'll treat it as a ceremony. And that's the place you want to end up. So just keep your compass pointed in that direction, right? Like Chris said, don't get hung up that now you need Chris forever. Now I can't do it if I can't, get these sessions with Crystal. No, the point is we're support scaffolding along the way, but you want to be that mindfulness in the moment. And this brings up, I think, a good segue as we were talking about self-care, because we have rights. We all have some basic rights, and we may want to state our different specific rights for ourselves based on our traumas, which is really helpful. And in self-care, I have the choice, you have the choice, the listeners have the choice of where and how to show up in ceremony and what role to play. So just because you can, and this is to the facilitators, right, who are listening, just because a lot of us do it as a living too, just because you've learned some of these principles, that doesn't actually mean that you have to show up like that everywhere you go. So you can have some boundaries. You can say, "Hey, I'm in line at the bank, and this mom is having a meltdown behind me." And yes, I could show up in the container of facilitator. I could co-regulate. I could offer this, but I also have the right to be human. I also have the right to choose. I have the right to change my mind. I have the right to be messy. I have the right to be dysregulated today. I have the right for self-care. And I think that's a good segue to what do we mean by this elusive idea, and often like what's the word, like not perpetrated, but like I feel like there's been this disservice done to self-care. A lot of times it's the rhetoric around it is not actually what it is. And I think real self-care ties back to knowing these basic rights and having them in your mind, and knowing that you have the right to show up in whatever role you want where you go. And so you can do that even if you're not a facilitator, because we're all a facilitator of our lives and are
Right.
probably somewhere. So we all need this. Um so yeah, how do you want to, what are your thoughts, and how do you want to segue that into self-care? That's something that's been come up really big for me too. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
I think there's such a beautiful importance for us to remember that no matter the roles that we play in this world, we are human.
Mhm.
And as you were saying, like I'm in line at the bank and all these things, like so in my role as a therapist, sometimes I feel like I'm always on the clock, so to speak. Or I'm always focused on specific things and areas. And this has been an evolutionary process for me in my life, both by trade and also in my personal life, where when do I take off the therapist cap? And if and when I do take it off, what does that mean? Does that mean I remove all of my communication skills as well, or my empathy, or my ability to be calm and relaxed and do self-care, right? Early on in life, it was like, well, you can't do therapy to family. Or maybe a family member would say, like, don't try that therapy thing on me. Like, don't, I see what you're doing, like, you're trying to, whatever. And so I might say, well, now I'm going to like put everything to the side. I'm going to leave everything at work again, like my assertiveness or my love and compassion and those kinds of things. And so over time, I've realized like, no, it's not the whole thing. I've got to pick and choose what parts are authentically me. And then when I leave work at work, what that means. It's not it's like a different combination even week after week.
Oh,
You
I
know?
love how you're talking about it. I love how you're making it so kind of nuanced.
Mhm.
It sounds like what you're saying is you have to navigate that in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, when I ask somebody questions and they say it depends, I'm like, no, just tell me what it is. Tell me what to do. Right.
Oh, you would hate me as a guru then.
But that's the same thing that I'll say to my people. Like, well, it depends. Like, let's dig further,
Yes.
because as a human, I simultaneously want the answers to just be bestowed upon me. And like, here you go. And here's the voice. And here's the, like, here's the message that comes through. Here are your instructions. This is your mission if you should choose to accept it or whatever it is, But you said this a while back. We're being pointed. We want people to point us in the right direction. And that's one of my goals. And we have a mutual friend named Dave who uses the phrase asking well-placed questions. Because I don't have answers for anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have answers. I'm just helping you find them. I'm helping you figure out where, like you said a moment ago, where to look for it.
Yeah.
And so when somebody, I'm working through a little bit of problematic feelings toward the use of telling someone else I'm a healer. There's a part of me that's like, ugh, I'm not. The person that comes into my office is capable of healing, of self-healing, so to speak. But there's been a struggle of being able to do it alone. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. I can't do my own healing alone
Mm-hmm.
either. Even though I went to school and I did this training, I've been doing this for years and all of those things.
Yeah.
I can't do it on myself or for myself.
Yeah.
I get to talk to somebody.
I love that. I like to say, I've forgotten. They've forgotten. And so we're just helping them remember.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten I need your help. And I love reaching out for help because it's such an embodied, cool feeling. And someone once told me, if you have a hang up on receiving, then you either consciously or unconsciously have a hang up on giving. You're putting stipulations on that because it's the same flow. It's the same principle that if you're trying to block or prevent bad things from happening in the world, in the universe, then you are unconsciously blocking the positive flow as well. Because to the universe, like Rumi says, there's a field outside of this where there is no right and wrong. I'll meet you there. So the flow of the universe is flow of the universe. So any of that blocking is blocking all of it. I usually like to tell a lot of good stories, so it's not boring for your listeners. And now we're a ways in, but we haven't told any stories. and I want to tell this story because to your point of where to point people and how to help them remember, and then how to ask for help when we need to remember. I have this friend. We've known each other for a long time in my industry. We've become really good friends in the last year, and every time we go somewhere, and there's a question or a fork in the road or something has to be done, she says, "What does your intuition tell you?" And I love that so much, and I want to be more like her. So I've tried to adopt that. And it's not common just in when you're out with your friends or whatnot. And so we were driving down the canyon, which you and I know well because we've worked up there for years. And there was one of the worst accidents I've seen. I've seen many accidents on my trek up the Provo Canyon. This one, the car was actually facing up the canyon, but was upside down in the river. And I was like, that's a strange way to get in the river. And I've seen a lot of cars in the river on that drive. And there had been 3 or 4 cars that had stopped and a couple people standing on the side. And it looked like 2 people in the ditch. And I'm trained as a first responder and I trust myself in emergency situations. But I had my friend and our daughters in the car and I way slowed down. And I know who to call and where that canyon is. And I rolled down my window and I was having this turmoil inside. Like, I've got other things to do. And I don't know if these people have called or if they know what to do. And I'm feeling this obligation. So I was kind of hesitating. And I was like, does it look like they've got everyone out of the car? Like, does it look like someone's in charge? Does it look like someone's in the phone? And, the girls were like, I can't tell. And I was like, do I stop? And my friend looked at me and goes, what does your intuition tell you? And I was like, oh, thank you for that. Anyways, the decision I made was to call, the emergency they have up there at Sundance. They hadn't been called. They had just called, regular emergency services, which could take 20 minutes. I rolled down my window and I said, is everyone out of the car? And they said yes. And I said, have you called 911? And they said yes. And I said, have you called Sundance? And they said no. And I said, okay, I'm leaving. I'm going to call Sundance on my way down because they'll be there in a matter of minutes, right? But just to give you an example of when these things happen in our life, like I have taken this little friend and like made a piece of her and put it in my brain so I can carry her around with me now to when those things happen and you kind of hold your breath. What does your intuition tell you? And I've given myself that pause now. Yeah. And I'm trying to, help other people, give them that little nugget as well, because I thought that was so beautiful and it helped me so much.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's so powerful. Because sometimes we jump into action. Sometimes we, even in first responder training or in CPR training, the first aid and all those things, they talk so much about assessing the situation and not assuming. I was in a car accident about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. And it could have been, I'll preface it with saying this, it could have been so much worse. And everybody walked away from it. And I got out and one car was crumpled in the front. Another car was upside down. And you go into these, like I need to write down my experience actually still. This is going to be part of my self-care. Cause I'm still like processing through all of it. but you grab the phone to call 911 and making sure that's going on, and checking on people, and what's the highest priority, what's the highest risk, and in a situation like that, when water's involved, like, it takes things to a whole different level. When children or vulnerable adults or people with limitations, are involved, it takes it to a completely different level. Sometimes we're wounded and we don't realize that we're wounded. We go into fight or flight. Sometimes we go into shock. Sometimes we go into, like, the chemicals that get released in the brain are very powerful chemicals. And sometimes they inhibit us from doing things. And sometimes they make us more capable of doing some pretty incredible things. Sometimes some scary things. But
yeah, it sounds like that isn't totally processed for you.
Yeah.
And you need to revisit the basic rights of, I'm allowed to feel this
Yeah.
to the full extent. I'm allowed to be scared. I wouldn't wonder, would you let me read this list of basic, it's called your Bill of Rights.
Please do.
And you've probably seen it. I mean,
Yes.
you've read probably more literature than I have in this therapy realm. But I love this stuff, and I love what you do, because my 20-year history is just in the holistic stuff. It's just very kind of like you're somatically working all this stuff through the body. And yeah, it's true that a lot of the time you don't have to intellectualize it. But what I've noticed is that you need both. Really, like, if I could give any message to your listeners, is if you're out there doing plant medicine, breath work, somatic, yoga retreats, all these things, you need a therapist like Chris in your life. Like, you need somebody who's embodied to ground these things down and make sense and integrate them, embody them, have these principles work in your life. And if all you do is talk therapy, and you can't get it through your body, you need what I offer. So that's my little plug for that. But that's why I love the therapy stuff so much, because my world is heavy laden in the somatic exercises. And this is an intellectual exercise that I feel like heals your soul. So for the purposes of, if you're listening, you could use this as actually an embodied practice right now that me and Chris have been talking to you. Maybe you've picked up some cool tidbits, but if you're still listening right now, you could actually just like hold still, and me and Chris can do the same thing, and take a deep breath and just feel in your body where these phrases land. You have the right to be you. You have the right to be safe. You have the right to be treated with respect. You have the right to put yourself first. You have the right to make decisions that affect you. You have the right to say no. You have the right to make mistakes. You have the right to ask questions about anything that affects your life. You have the right to not be responsible for other adults' problems. You have the right to earn and control your own money. You have the right to be human, not perfect. You have the right to be angry and protest if you are treated unfairly or abusively by anyone. You have the right to not be liked by everyone. You have the right to love and be loved. And I'm going to add a couple of my personal ones. You have the right to have a preference. You have a right to change your mind. And you have a right to take care of yourself. You have a right to disappoint people. While we're in this space, if there's a couple more that's coming up for you personally, say them in your mind, and just let that settle. So you can pause this podcast if you want, actually. You can come back, open your eyes. That is just the first stepping stone on a path that I think where me and Chris's worlds really intersect. Yeah. To start opening up some of that space and start doing some of that work. And the reason why I wanted to read that is because, to me, that's the foundational work of self-care. It's not going to the spa and getting a massage. It is like truly witnessing your soul and honoring who you are and all the rights you have. And when you do that, you treat other human beings with those rights. And so that's my definition of self-care.
Yeah, I love that. That's incredible. And I hope our audience will use that. if it's okay, I'm going to clip that and share that, because that will be such a huge resource for people. I did it myself. I felt some very powerful things that I'm going to journal about afterward. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Two last questions. One, where can people find you? How can they follow you? You and I recorded for your podcast a while back. How can people get in touch with you and get to know more of what you bring to the table? How could they work with you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm very available on social media and email right now, because I've really contained the portions of my life where I'm working. um, so I answer my own emails and I answer my own Instagram right now, and I love that. I love the beautiful connection, and it's at a pace that I can handle right now, and I love it. So everything online is called Crystal Zinn Yoga. I have a website called Crystal Zinn Yoga. I have free content that is my heart's passion to put out on my YouTube, called Crystal Zinn Yoga, on YouTube. My next one I'm recording right now is Yoga for Your Mom, because my mom asked me for a series because she's been having some back pain in her, morning routine at the rec center. So I made her a series, and I was like, this is good for everyone's mom. So, anyways, free meditations, free little lectures. My podcast is on YouTube, and my podcast is called Crystal Zen Yoga. As far as like being around me and being with me, I am holding specialized events over the next couple months to funnel and as little previews to my retreat in Italy. And that's being done with two of some of my best friends. So you can find that on my website. We're going to Sardinia, and I will keep posting live. So follow me on socials, where you can come for either free or very little cost, where we're doing mini yoga, breath work, and sound therapy with energy work. And we've got 4 or 5 of those events coming up, depending on when you release this. And then we're going to Italy in June.
Right.
And then on and on as life flows. But thank you for the opportunity to plug that. I'm just passionate about creating a space where, like we said before, you can co-regulate, creating a space where if people need support, you have to be ready, and you have to at least be able to get yourself from A to B, right? Like the addict or their family at least has to be able to get themselves from their basement to the facility. So if you can do that, get yourself to these events, to a retreat, to Chris, to a facility, whatever area of your life you need help in. And then once you're there, you get to start embodying some of these things. And so that's the space I'm working as I'm there. I'm not convincing people. I'm not selling. I'm not pulling people. I'm not working in the space of getting them there. There's beautiful support and facilitation for that area. But my little thing I'm resonating and sitting in is I'm there. I'm saying, come,
Mhm.
and I'm holding that space there. So if you can get to anything, I would love to connect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys got to give her a follow. Go check
Thank
this
you.
out. And yeah, one of these days, I don't know if I'll make Italy this time, but in the
Yeah.
near future, I'm gonna be jumping into these.
Yeah.
They,
Maybe collaborating on some
yeah,
retreat stuff in the
yeah,
future.
yeah. I hope so.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I've got plenty of individuals that I need to send to these, myself included, to these other more local, smaller events coming up as well. So thank you so much. That was actually my second question, was about the retreat. And so
Oh, yeah.
making sure
Well,
the information out
if
there.
they're still staying tuned, just so you know, the retreat is for people who kind of need a re-beginning, like a rebirth is what we're calling it, a new beginning or rebirth. So this is specifically themed towards people who have done a lot of work. Maybe they're in recovery. Maybe they've raised their kids. Like the people who are coming with us kind of seem to have a transformational life experience going on. They've just healed from cancer, for example. And they sort of shed these layers or done this work, and they need to come up for air. So what we've created on this retreat is practices and adventure and things where the ceremonies are shedding, like really letting go of the old, letting it come up, feeling it together in co-regulation with us, and letting it go and really stepping into the new. So the beautiful thing about like a facility or a retreat is that nothing's familiar around you. So you don't drop into those old triggers. You really, your body, your mind, your habits are free. It's all the unknown. So it's a little scary. So that's why I said you've got to be able to do some work to get yourself all the way over to Italy and be with us for 7 days. But if you're in that stage, come with us, because That's where we're leaning into the unknown. Every morning is yoga. Every night is ceremony. We are going to have like womb healing, cacao ceremony, breath work, but the major parts of the days are setting in the new vibration. Like, you are going to adventure with us. We're going to take you through the hero's journey. So we're going to rock climb, even if you're afraid. We're going on boat trips. We're going to have a cooking class. We're going to go to an olive vineyard. Like, we're going to go over to this island off of Sardinia. We're going to swim. Like, this is the kind of ultimate experience of like stepping into the new. So anyways, thank you for letting me plug that, but I'm just passionate about it, creating that.
Yeah.
For the people who feel called and ready.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Thank you.
You guys give her a follow. Crystal Zinn Yoga with 2 N's, Zinn. And this has been amazing. This has been a wonderful connection. Thank you for helping me to regulate as we go about the rest of the day. And as I'll have clients and couples and families coming into my office today, this is a perfect way to begin.
Thank you.
So thank you for the refresher and the lift. Thank you to our audience and our listeners for being here, for spending your time with us. It's an absolute honor to get to spend this time with you, and that you would give us your attention. It's pretty incredible. So we will see you next time on the Heal the Hurt podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us on the Heal the Hurt podcast. Please like and subscribe to us on X at Heal the Hurt USA, or on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram at Heal the Hurt Nonprofit. This podcast is brought to you by Hobble Creek Behavioral Health and is edited and produced by Nielsen Digital.